All right, hello, can everyone hear me? Okay, how about now? Cool. So, I'm here to give a Godzilla panel, and I know this is an anime convention, and a lot of people might be going, WTF, why is this guy coming and talking about something that's not anime? And I will say that these things are related, and I'm going to make a case for that at this panel here. Godzilla versus anime, despite what the first slide has, it is not, in fact, a dance-off. So if that's what you were looking for, you are maybe in the wrong place. But we're going to talk about Godzilla references in anime because there are quite a lot of them. We're going to talk about the history of the whole genre and franchise of Godzilla and other giant monster movies in Japan. And then talk about the people who are creators in both of the industries that have worked on these like kaiju eiga and also in Japanese animation. There have been a lot of crossovers between anime stuff and the Godzilla monsters as well, and there's been some anime of those monsters as well. So we're going to talk about Godzilla as a franchise, but we're also going to talk about Gamera a little bit because, you know, they're close enough. We're not going to talk about Ultraman because that's a whole other 2-hour panel that we would do, or any giant robot show that has giant monsters in it that could go on forever also. So I think what we're going to do to start is we're going to have some audience participation. So we're going to just have references. So.
Yeah, I was about to say I was Urusei Yatsura, but when I saw that, you already had that written there.
Yeah, so this is in Urusei Yatsura. In Beautiful Dreamer, they go out to a movie theater, they watch a movie. Who knows what movie this is?
That's the original Gojira?
Yeah, 1954.
Yes.
That's the Oxygen Destroyer.
That was Beautiful Dreamer.
That is in Beautiful Dreamer. Yep, so the Oxygen Destroyer shows up. You see Dr. Serizawa there. It's on in the finale of the movie. Come up and select a prize from the stuff that's on the table.
All right, let's see what we got here.
Ooh. All right.
Never mind, it escaped me, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Anyone else? What's this little creature that the Godzilla suit is holding? Yes.
Ultimate collection.
No. Mr. Shin.
Let's go with this.
Yes. Minila. Literally mini Godzilla. Minila.
Oh yeah, she also did Ghidorah in that too.
Yep. And Miss Namikawa also in that Project Eiko thing. What's up?
I can tell you where that image from Vidya's from.
Yeah, it was either Godman or Green Man, but
It was one of the two, yeah.
yeah. Go for it. If you want one of these things, come up and take it. All right, this bit in Love Hina.
That's Mothra.
Yes, Mothra. There's two little singing fairies that can summon Mothra.
I knew that.
Already got that one.
This bit in Little Witch Academia, Susie is imitating something. What is she imitating?
I know this one.
Yes. So you see the beams coming out of her back, much like Godzilla has in the movie Shin Godzilla, and her foot has little mushrooms coming off of it because at the end of that movie, little creatures are coming off of Godzilla's tail, as you can see there. Okay, in Monster Musume, there are mushroom people called Matango. What could that be a reference to?
It's the Toho movie Matango that had mushroom people in it.
Exactly. Just what it says on the tin. If you want to take something.
Okay.
You guys are doing good. All right, so there's this bit in One Piece. That guy got his hand up first. Yes, it is the movie Atragon with a flying submarine with a drill on the front. And if you only watch anime, never watch any live action stuff, you'd still know this because there's an anime remake, Super Atragon. there's a bit in Lucky Star where the main character is in Kyoto Station. She looks up,
I know,
says,
because I went on the exact same tour that they were in Lucky Star, and I said the exact same things that they said when I was there. I was like, hey, this is where Iris was.
I know, right? That's what I did when I was in Kyoto Station.
Do I get another prize? I already...
You raised your hand, so I guess you... Yes. So you can see the same station in the background there. You folks are on the roll. Okay, a giant green sea monster showing up in Pat Labor. Look, in the back?
War of the Gargantuans?
Yes. War of the Gargantuas. If you were watching the current season of Attack on Titan, there are some very similar looking creatures. All right. Who is she cosplaying?
The Exilian.
Yes. Specifically, Miss Namikawa from the movie Monster Zero. I'm gonna run out of stuff. I wasn't expecting people to get all these.
No, I know. Oh, I know this one. I know both of these.
Yes. This bit in Tekken Concrete is actually a double reference, so it's the Mysterians
And Gappa.
and Gappa. Two different movie posters from a decade apart that they just sort of smashed together. There's a bit in Prefectural Earth Defense Force where Baradagi says, like, oh, I remember how my father dies, and this clip plays. Anyone know? I think you... Go ahead.
I guess Baran must be her dad for some reason.
Yes, her name is Baradagi. That's also the name of the monster initially in the movie Varan the Unbelievable.
Oh.
All right. One more. This is in Dororo and Enma-kun. I think you were first.
The one seeing girl in Hedora.
Yes.
Like savior. Yep.
All right. Yeah. There's a big club scene in Godzilla vs. Hedorah where you get this psychedelic singing lady in body paint. Ooh, I think I have another one that might be interesting. So, in Neon Genesis Evangelion, there is a monster called Jet Alone. And then in Concrete Revolution, there's a monster called Red Jaguar.
Yeah.
All right, who has not gotten anything so far? All right,
Actually,
go for
already
it.
got it.
That's Jet Jaguar from Godzilla vs. Megalon.
Yes, Jet Jaguar. And we got two things left up here. If anyone wants the other one and can tell me what the other section of the name would have come from for these things.
Could you repeat that?
Okay, so why would they be named Jet Alone and Red Jaguar?
Well, it's both. Well, Jet Alone is from the Jet Jaguar, and Red Jaguar is from the Jaguar and Jet Jaguar. So it's like the name getting split up, I guess.
No, he's asking like why the alone part and why the red part.
Yes.
Is it because the movie was supposed to be Jet Jaguars only and then they added Godzilla?
Okay, it doesn't seem like anyone has this. When Jet Jaguar was first designed, his name was Red Alone. So the fact that the creators of Evangelion knew this means they are giant nerds, and also the same thing with Concrete Revolution. So the moral of the story here is there is influence on anime coming from kaiju movies. And even if they're not obvious at first, when you hear creators talk about them, they're like, oh yeah, the Titans in Attack on Titan are based on Gauss from Gamera Guardian of the Universe. And you're like, huh, I never thought about that, but that makes sense. So there's a lot of influence, but in that case, if you don't watch any of this stuff, you might be thinking like, well, what is this whole Godzilla thing anyway? Godzilla is a movie franchise created by Toho Company Limited, and it spans approximately 32 movies with 5 more in production right now. It's been going since the 50s, and it's sort of a big shared universe thing. It was formative. It might be the nucleation point of modern Japanese science fiction. And for the sake of argument, yes, I am going to say it wrong the entire panel. I should be saying Gojira, but I'm saying Godzilla because of reasons. It's complicated.
It's the way it was advertised in the U.S. and most people say Godzilla, not the.
Yep, exactly.
The Americans call it that, so.
Well, you know what in Hideaki Anno's Godzilla movie, I think that there was like a scene where they were like discussing the different interpretations of his name. I mean, what's her name? But that woman who's kind of like Masato was talking about how they were calling him Godzilla in like Western countries or something like that.
Yeah. They do that in the movies. So just a quick sort of overview of the franchise. So if I start saying Showa Heisei type of stuff and it's not completely baffling and befuddling, basically the periods of the movies break down roughly lines of the decade that they were made in. So you have your first set of movies, and really starting off with 1954 with the original Godzilla. This is made basically as a reaction to King Kong just came out in Japan and was doing very well. Beast from 20,000 Fathoms had just done very well in Japan. Like, that's transparently what it was. Officially, the story is that Tomiyuki Tanaka was like riding in an airplane and looked out the window and saw like the ocean and thought, what if there was a giant monster down there? I think it was just he was looking at how much money these monster movies were making and thought, what if we made one of those? The thing is, though, this movie came out in 1954. Japan had been nuked less than a decade before that. Japan was getting poisoned by Japanese fishing boats wandering into H-bomb test sites. So the original Godzilla movie is actually like super dark and allegorical, and it's sort of a bummer to watch, and a lot of people don't realize that if you've only watched, subsequent movies. This trend sort of continued throughout the 1950s, where you had, the movie Rodan, which is very inspired by the American movie Them, or The Mysterians, which was, very like War of the Worlds type of stuff. This all started to change in the 1960s when there was a movie made by the title of Mothra. Mothra is about two little fairies that are kidnapped, so they sing a song and they summon a giant moth. And if this sounds really ridiculous, it's sort of intended to be. And at this point, the movies take on a lighter tone and sort of become their own animal, so to speak. Yeah, what's up?
I heard, wasn't Mothra supposed to be called The Thing originally or something like that?
No, that was American.
Yeah.
That's how it was translated when the Team Up Lore versus movie with Godzilla came out.
So the goofy trend sort of continued from there. Mothra was a huge success, so they're like, let's make these movies a little more comedic, a little bit more whimsical, and you got King Kong versus Godzilla. And from that point forward, monster movies turned into like giant wrestling matches. You got more and more like weird creations, like Ghidra here is a three-headed dragon, and the plot of that movie is that the previous monsters all come together and they have to overcome their differences and their villainy in order to fight off a greater threat. It's like the Avengers, basically. So these were doing pretty well, and basically had one dude working on the special effects, and this dude's name was Eiji Tsuburaya. In the 60s, Tsuburaya went off and he created his own company and basically did a television show that was Monster of the Week. It was called Ultra Q. Ultra Q ran for about a season or so, 26 episodes, and after that point they had this idea of like, well, what if there was a giant hero that fought the monsters? And they brought in this guy to fight the Ultra Q monsters, Ultraman. And from that point, it was like pandemonium, the floodgates are open, there are just monster movies all over the place. In 1965, in anticipation of Ultra Q coming out, Daiei Studios decided that they were going to also make a giant monster movie. Officially, the story was the producer of Gamera was riding on an airplane, and he looked down at a cloud and he thought, that looks like a giant flying turtle. And if you think, well, that sounds a lot like Godzilla, well, there's a lot of things in Gamera that sound a lot like Godzilla. The initial set of Gamera movies were not exactly great. They were very cheaply made, sort of like the Godzilla wannabes, and they are fun. They're very like child friendly. You have this giant turtle monster that turns into a flying saucer and like spins around.
The first three were actually kind of good, but after that was just like Godzilla's Revenge of a series, you know?
Yeah, pretty much.
It helped that their budget was between nil and whatever they could find in the cushions by that time.
Oh yeah, I mean it's there's a reason why they were on Mystery Science Theater a lot. If you recognize Gamera and you don't watch live action stuff, well, maybe you watch Dragon Ball, because Master Roshi has a little baby Gamera that he rides around on.
When I first saw Dragon Ball, that was my initial reaction. Yeah.
So, because of the success of Ultraman, monster movies were everywhere in the 60s, and eventually you get to this point, the 67 kaiju boom, where you've got this super saturation. So all of this stuff came out in 1967. I don't know how people kept up with it. It's like, you know, watching every single superhero TV show and movie that comes out today in the States. And when that happens, you get a little bit of market dilution. People aren't going to go to the movies if they can see their stuff on TV. And on top of that, the Japanese economy started not doing as well. Basically, the Japanese film industry went into full apocalypse mode in the 1970s. And in order to cope with this and the oil crisis and just having no budgets, they start making movies that are really goofy and outlandish. And even that doesn't necessarily save things. And I think, you know, it's very transparent here. Gamera versus Ziegler, actually, while that movie was being made, at one point the studio executives came and they said, hey guys, we don't have any money, we can't pay anyone this week, but you're all going to finish the movie, right? And the employees decided they were going to destroy the studio instead. So there were no more Gamera movies after that for a while.
I think to make one more or whatever with a snake or whatever.
Yeah, there was an attempt. It didn't get made.
Well, wait a minute. There was that clip show one that was like Gamera Super Monster.
That was 9 years later by a different studio.
And he popped the Super Star Destroyer in that one for some reason.
We'll get to that. So yeah, lots of goofy stuff. You have Godzilla fighting his mechanical doppelganger. You have Godzilla fighting a pollution monster. You have this whatever is going on in the bottom there.
Don't forget you have Godzilla flying while fighting the pollution monster.
What's up?
This is also a time when Toho has switched the way they did their films with their actors through their new face program. And
Yes.
yeah, they switched things around because it was similar to how they did it in the old Hollywood sense, where their actors had to do the films they chose, but after that, most of the actors went to television, and television was taking over, basically, at this time.
Yeah. So to sort of combat against these like lower attendances, what they started doing was these movies were actually made for movie series, where you would, you know, pay one ticket and you'd see like 3 movies that were, you know, on the shorter end of things, and you'd watch them all at once. Because of this, you get a lot of actual pairings with anime stuff. So I always think it's funny that, you know, if you look at one of the backup movies for Godzilla vs. Megalon in the middle, it's Panda Go Panda, which if you're a Hayao Miyazaki fan, you're like, isn't that his first theatrical film? And yeah, so.
Well, the first one looks like a baseball one or what? Yeah.
Yeah, that's Kyojin no Hoshi. It is a baseball movie. There's a lot of sports anime, so they're a big hit. There's a tennis thing also on the and baseball anime underneath the King Kong Escapes one. So basically everything collapsed for about a decade, and they weren't making giant monster movies really very much anymore. And at some point in the late 80s, they decided to reboot things, you know, make it for a new generation, high production values, continuity, and you got a series of 7 Godzilla movies that came out during this time, and the Gamera movies got rebooted, and somehow the Gamera movies were better than the Godzilla movies, and this blew everyone's mind. So we'll talk a little bit more about those as we talk about the who's who's. In the 2000s, we get what's called the Millennium Era. Basically, they stopped making Godzilla movies in 1995 because there was a big, amazing American production that was on the horizon.
It doesn't exist.
So that came out, and they were like, "Oh crap, we got to reboot this again right now." And then they kept rebooting. of the 7 Godzilla movies that came out in that time period, 2 of them were in continuity with each other. And even Gamera got a reboot in this time also.
Never did get around to seeing that camera.
It's good. Again, attendance sort of wanes off in the mid 2000s, and that sort of brings us to the current era of kaiju stuff. And this is what I think it's interesting. A lot of the stuff that's coming out in Japan right now is partially reactions to the stuff that's being made in the US.
No, I see you got that poster from that new Gamera movie that was supposed to be coming out, but I heard that they had some issues with that. It was supposed to be on 2016, but do you know what happened with that?
They're still working on it, last I heard. Yeah, we'll get to that.
And hopefully, since they're taking this much time, they'll actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, the other big thing during this time is a lot of these movies are sort of catharsis for the Fukushima disaster. So you're going to see that as a recurring motif, and that serves as inspiration in a lot the same way that, like, the initial nuclear stuff did in the 50s. Or the concerns in the 1980s, even.
Oh, shit, that's so good.
So let's go ahead and start talking about some of the creators who have worked on both Japanese anime and on the Godzilla franchise. And I think we'll start off with the musicians. So if you hear iconic giant monster music, odds are it's going to be from Akira Ifukube. Ifukube was a big deal. Like, when Japan surrendered after World War II, like, they played his music to greet the arriving generals. His stuff has been used in a couple of anime, such as The Little Prince and the Eight-Headed Dragon, or this one segment in Genius Party that's pretty great. But he did so many monster movies, I literally could not count them all, and that's saying something. And he also is responsible for the creation of the Godzilla Roar, which was a resin glove being scraped across a double bass. A guy that made a lot of the music for the Gamera movies is Shunsuke Kikuchi, and like, I'm a big Dragon Ball fan, and I always hear that sort of like funky kung fu-ish sound even when it's monsters fighting, and I think that that's pretty great. I'm not a big fan of Koichi Sugiyama's music, but he did Dragon Quest and a handful of other anime type of related stuff. It's got more of like a superhero type of sound to it.
Is it Secrets of Fire Child or something like that? I think it was.
Yeah, Serious no Densetsu.
Yeah. I was. So he did some music in it?
Yep. Ko Otani is a giant in the anime industry. He's done a whole lot of great stuff, including, Gundam Wing, Outlaw Star. Another one that I like a whole lot. He worked on City Hunter, but he's also one of the iconic giant monster music guys. He does a lot of really sort of creepy sounding stuff. Michiru Oshima. Her music has a more sort of majestic sound to it, and if you've seen Full Metal Alchemist, it's a very similar sort of you get that sense of something sweeping and grand a lot of the time. Incidentally, she will be attending a convention here, a Godzilla convention, in 2 months. So if you got your Little Witch Academia soundtracks or something, feel free to stop by.
Little Witch Academia? Wow.
Yep.
Pretty good.
Shiro Sagisu, one of the favorite composers of Hideaki Anno, does a lot of chanting type of stuff, even in his Attack on Titan soundtracks. And if you think that this sounds Evangelion-esque, I refer you to another track that's in Shin Godzilla.
I find that they just took that music directly out of Evangelion and stuck it in there.
It's different music, but it sounds the same.
Was that from Macros?
That was from Shin Godzilla. All of this was Godzilla music.
Same song as Evangelion. What? It was the same song as Evangelion. Oh. Besides the battle.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the music that they play whenever we're planning about how are we going to beat the giant monster.
Yeah, it's very appropriate for that movie. This is one that's not very well recognized, but I think is totally awesome. And this is Katsuhiro Otomo, the creator of Akira. He did the manga and the anime. Big name in the industry, you know, trained lots of up-and-comers, lots of anime classics. One of the first things that he ever got published was illustrations for a story that ran in Starlog that is completely insane. It's called A Space Godzilla. That's basically about, Godzilla washes up dead on the beach, dying of diabetes, so they turn Godzilla's corpse into a spaceship and send it back to the Godzilla planet, and things get weird from there.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard crazy.
Did you say Godzilla Planet?
Yes, Godzilla Planet.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the story was written by Nobuhiko Obayashi, who also was the director of House, so that should say something.
House is a movie where there's a piano that eats a girl.
Yes, if you've ever wanted to, you know, have a phrase like, the lamp was eating Kung Fu, so Kung Fu's leg killed a picture of a cat, and have it make sense, watch the movie House. Another creator that did some Godzilla illustrations, Toshiki Hirano actually did a full volume of Godzilla manga that was an adaptation of the 1989 movie Godzilla vs. Biollante.
Ooh, I want to see that. I've been looking all over for that on the internet. You know anything about that?
I've got a copy.
All right, I want to see it.
So Hirano is actually, you know, he's the creator of Ixer 1. Ixer 1 makes a cameo in this manga, which is pretty cool. You know, he also, you know, created Dangayo and Vampire Princess Miu and directed a couple of those great adaptations. So there are actually a whole bunch of Godzilla manga out there, and a lot of them are done by people that are like pretty big names in the manga industry. You know, Shigeru Mizuki, Naoki Urasawa, Leiji Matsumoto, Jiro Kawada, Rumiko Takahashi, Kazuhisa Kondo, Keiji Nakazawa, Ken Ishikawa, Shinpei Ito, you know, the list goes on. So it's always fun to just sort of like pick up a random manga and check out who did it, because a lot of people have worked on this stuff, and it's interesting, but it's also not anime, so I'm not going to talk about it too much here. I have another panel that's about manga that's up on YouTube. You can find it. I love the story of Shinji Nishikawa because he started out in the 1980s just doing doujinshi at Comiket of like Godzilla related stuff, and Toho was like, hey, you should come work for us and design our monsters. So he wound up designing most of the monsters of the 90s and 2000s. From an anime perspective, you know him as the creator of Yacht. He's worked on a few other things like Yami Shibai, Blue Sea Sashimi, and a handful of other things here and there. But he comes to US conventions a lot, so if you get a chance, go get an illustration from him. Yoji Shinkawa, mostly known for video game stuff, but Zone of the Enders was an anime, ergo I can keep it in here and not feel too guilty about it. He did designs for the movie Godzilla Final Wars, and also has designed this weird sort of mechanical Godzilla figurine, actually, that's available. Also working on the movie Godzilla Final Wars is Katsuya Terada, who you know from doing the monster designs for Blood the Last Vampire. Mahiro Maeda did designs for the most recent Godzilla movie and the 90s Gamera movies. He is the director of Blue Submarine 6 and Last Exile and Final Fantasy Unlimited, if you want to bring that into it. So, and that's, to clarify, he's the director of those things. The designer on those two shows was Range Murata. So during the 1960s, there were sort of two big writers at Toho. You had Takeshi Kimura and Shinichi Sekizawa. Sekizawa's stuff was the stuff that was going to be light and whimsical and not like depressing. And he just cranked out a whole bunch of screenplays. He actually got his start in Kyoto as a member of a manga circle, in the same manga circle as Osamu Tezuka, as a matter of fact. So he worked on a couple of anime movies as well at Toei during sort of the early days of Toei Doga, such as Jack and the Witch and Gulliver's Travels Beyond the Moon. I got to bring up Yoshimitsu Banno, who unfortunately just passed away earlier this month. He is a maverick. He does weird things. His movies get banned.
Oh man, I was looking forward to his remake of Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster because he kept on wanting to remake that.
Yes. So he did a crazy psychedelic acid trip of a Godzilla movie that, you know, the producers basically looked at and said, yeah, you're not working here again. But he, you know, kept on plugging away at it, and he attempted to get a Godzilla movie made up until the last decade. In his anime work, he's probably the one he was most involved with. He worked on the Wizard of Oz anime, one of the Wizard of Oz anime, there's a few, and also Technopolice 21C. So that was one that was intended to be a TV series, was made into a movie instead. But some of the ideas were later recycled, and it was re-envisioned as Bubblegum Crisis, which is, you know, an anime that was also intended to be a TV series and was made into an OVA instead, but at least that one did well. And it's funny because, you know, that was re-envisioned. Similar deal with his plans to make an IMAX Godzilla movie. He shopped it around and shopped it around and shopped it around, and eventually a studio picked it up, completely like excised all of his craziness, and they made the 2014 Godzilla reboot. Another writer who's a big name in the anime industry is Kazunori Ito. You know, he wrote the Ghost in the Shell 1995 movie, wrote Patlabor, other stuff from Amuro Oshii. But yeah, he also wrote this awesome trilogy of Gamera movies in the 1990s. So, you know, and it's funny because, you know, Ghost in the Shell came out in between the first two Gamera movies. So like within the span of 2 years, like 3 great hits.
Sir?
Yes.
I see X Evolution is up there as well.
Yes.
Are you confident? Did someone get in the way in that process? 'Cause I'm not confident that's something to be proud of.
I mean, that's fair.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Katsuhiro Ishii is a big writer-director in Japan. He hasn't done a lot of anime, but the anime that he's done has been sublime because he wrote and directed Trava the Fifth Planet, which was then taken and rejiggered and made into this movie Redline, which he also wrote the script for.
Trava takes place in the same universe, but it wasn't like directly made into the movie Redline. I mean, the characters from Trava Fifth Planet show up in it, but it's a completely different plot.
Yeah, it's a shared universe thing. He is allegedly working on a Gamera movie. We got a trailer for it back in 2015. We have heard radio silence ever since then. So.
Oh, wait a minute. So this movie has been in production since 2015.
Yeah, we'll see if it actually happens.
Well, they got a trailer for it at least.
You have the trailer?
What?
You have the trailer with you, or?
I don't have it on me.
I mean, it looks like Gamera's going to be finding a rebooted version of yours, which looks pretty badass. So, tell me.
We'll see. It might be like the Godzilla trailer where it was nothing like that. So. This is one that I think is really interesting as a writer, that the same guy that did Jewel Pet and the Pretty Boy Swim-A-Lot show also wrote a movie where Godzilla is a zombie fueled by the souls of the World War II angry dead.
What was that?
A giant monsters all out attack.
Yes, Daikaiju Sokogeki, or Giant Monsters All Out Attack.
Yeah.
Another fellow that's going to be at the Godzilla convention in 2 months is Shinji Higuchi, who has done a whole lot of stuff on a whole lot of projects, mostly as a writer storyboarder. He's done a lot of directing as well. He's a big special effects guy, so he did the special effects on those excellent Gamera movies, wound up directing Attack on Titan, the live-action one, and Shin Godzilla, which is the most recent Godzilla movie. And he wrote and storyboarded and directed big chunks of Nadia and Evangelion. The main character in Evangelion is actually named after him.
Oh yeah, you also got God Warrior over there. I kind of feel like the God Warrior movie was kind of like testing out a bunch of stuff that they were going to do in the Godzilla film. There's a very similar sort of.
Oh, it's very similar. Yes. So Shusuke Kaneko is a director who sort of cut his teeth on anime. He worked on Creamy Mami and Urusei Yatsura.
Oh, I didn't know he did those.
Yeah, wound up doing the Death Note movie, which some people like, some people don't. But is also the director on said aforementioned Zombie Godzilla movie and those really excellent Gamera movies. Now, one thing that I think is really cool is you have this scene from the end of one of his Urusei Yatsura episodes where a giant bird monster makes a nest in Tokyo Tower at sunset. And 15 years later...
Wait, he's the one that did that? Oh, it all makes sense now. I was thinking, it's kind of like in that Gamera movie.
Yep. So, side by side there, we got him. Ryuhei Kitamura is a director that does a lot of hyperkinetic action stuff. He directed Godzilla Final Wars. He also did the anime movie Baton and a handful of adaptations of anime, such as the
I didn't know he did anime.
mediocre Lupin the Third movie, and Azumi and Alive are much better. This brings us to Hideaki Anno, the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion and Gunbuster and several other things. He's definitely a maverick. He has a Godzilla movie that came out last year. It's going to be hitting Blu-ray from Funimation in a few months. And basically, he is... when he was first announced as a writer-director for this movie, I thought, man, I could not think of a better pick for that, because his whole career has been sort of in this stuff. If you look back at his first project, he was did Ultraman fan films, and the big break for Gainax as a studio was this project Daikon Films, and they did this opening for the Daikon convention, and it's just a whole bunch of random pop culture references, and in there are many kaiju, Godzilla, Gamera things, along with just about everything else. If you haven't seen these openings, I highly suggest tracking them down. And on that note, let's talk about other times when Godzilla has had crossovers with other things.
That's so cool.
There was an official Godzilla crossover for the Ultraman people lawsuit. They put a stupid basilisk fin on him, and they made him just get beat up by Ultraman in 5 minutes.
Yep, that was one of 2 times a Godzilla suit was used in an Ultra show. So
Was it the guy in the Godzilla suit with the flower around his neck, high on acid at the time during the fight?
I would be surprised, but I have not heard that. But.
So wait a minute. You said that there was a lawsuit over that, and so did they not have permission to use that suit or something? What?
I don't think there was a lawsuit over
The
that.
Ultraman people, they sued or something, lost. They didn't go anywhere, they didn't get any damages, didn't go off the ground. There was no traction to it, so they just took a Godzilla suit and did that because it wasn't Godzilla.
I mean, it was the same guy that made all of the suits, so I think they were just doing it for funsies, and I don't think Toho really resented it or anything. So, yeah, I've never heard about any sort of legal implications from that case. So Mattel had this line of figures during the 1970s that came out in the States, Shogun Warriors.
I used to have that toy when I was a kid. I don't think I have it anymore.
I still have one. Same here.
So these were mostly like Gonagai super robots, but they made a Godzilla figure. But because it was part of this figure line, you have this Godzilla that can fire his rocket punch, which I've always found like super amazing.
I don't know what is that for.
What?
Wasn't there a Rodan one or some other monster ones?
They also made a Rodan. What's up?
Did you see that they're remaking these in the colors of the new Godzilla?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can get new ones now if you have like $200 to spare.
Oh, they're $200?
They're really expensive.
Oh, yikes.
I think monster artists.
There have been a couple of things with Hello Kitty as cross promotions. The biggest of which was there was a Godzilla ride at Sanrio Land where you would basically be the plot was that you are on a ship that goes to the monster planet and you meet up with Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan. But your commander on the ship is Hello Kitty.
That is
There's been a handful of Evangelion crossover type of things, especially with Shin Godzilla last year, since it was the same director. We wound up.
I'd like to see Yano actually adapt that into an anime or something.
I mean, I would watch it.
I think they ran an ad around April 1st teasing that this was eventually going to happen, but then when April 1st came, I heard somewhere, or pretty much the staff more or less did the equivalent of
I'm not sure about that. I mean, Anno was announced as director for Shin Godzilla on April 1st, so like that was one of those things that seemed like it would be an April Fool's Day joke, but it made too much sense, and also like it's the start of the fiscal year in Japan, so sometimes big things get announced on April 1st, and you think this has got to be a joke, and they are not jokes. So anyway, you get monsters or Evas or whatever in the color schemes or fused with or whatever with the different monsters. Of course, if you're one of those people that doesn't watch Evangelion for the monsters, you can get
those, except they were so damn expensive.
yeah, your girl or Kaoru of choice and
Oh wait a minute. That figure of Asuka with the Godzilla tail, did they actually make a figure of that, or is that just a
I
drawing?
bought it yesterday. Yes, it is.
What? I want that.
It's the Rhodey crossover and they just
I bought it yesterday.
How expensive was that?
I think it was around $35 or something.
yeah. So 3 of the Godzilla movies in the 1990s were on double feature with the Hamtaro movies, and it's super weird that like again. Dark, depressing movie with zombie Godzilla fueled by the souls of the World War II dead, accompanied by cute hamster.
Well, I really didn't like Hamtaro, so I make those associations with each other.
So, as we alluded to earlier, there was a terrible Gamera movie made in 1980 when basically a new studio took over and they were just sort of grasping at straws for anything that they could get. So this movie has like Star Wars stuff that's stolen, Superman stuff stolen, whole cloth. And in this movie, for no discernible reason, Gamera meets the Galaxy Express 39 and the space battleship Yamato. Another bit that's in the movie that seems to go over a lot of people's heads is there's a bit where the kids go to the police station and they run into the main character from Kochi Kame.
Oh.
All right. So,
kidding me?
with Shin Godzilla last year, they decided to make a crossover episode. Shin-Chan versus Shin Godzilla. It's really goofy, as you would expect from Shin-Chan. In this episode, Shin-Chan grows giant, and he defeats Godzilla by plugging up his mouth with his butt.
I love Shin-Chan.
So this is, they say it's the first time that there's been anime of Godzilla. That's not entirely true. If you look at the history of the franchise, you get stuff like in Godzilla vs. Hedorah or Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, the movie that's completely on acid. There's little anime sequences throughout that movie of the title monster, going around eating pollution, or this factory that comes to life to It's really weird, and this is also a movie where somebody hallucinates that everyone in the nightclub has fish heads. So. In the 1980s, with Godzilla vs. Biollante, initially the plan was to have the end of this movie be an anime sequence where basically the monster turns into an anime form in order to do whatever it's doing in this deleted scene here.
That doesn't make any sense, but it looks cool.
It looks cool. It might be a little incongruous with the rest of the film. Maybe it was a good idea that they cut it out.
What about left in the manga version? Like this ending?
Yeah, I mean the manga is very different, but it is more like this, yeah. The one, again, by Toshiki Hirano.
Yeah. I think they also left the mine scene where one of them meets someone off the boat.
I think that's in there, yeah. So yeah, we've had these little bits here and there, but that's not like really having like a proper Godzilla anime. And I think what a lot of people have been chomping at the bit for is a proper Godzilla anime. And I get this question all the time of like, why hasn't one ever been made? And I always respond with, well, I've got good news for you. You're in luck.
There he is.
So this is an educational program that ran for a couple years, 26 episodes, and 4 OVAs. And basically it's, Godzilla and Friends teach people, your ABCs, or hiragana in this case, or basic arithmetic, and it is adorable.
So what's this one called?
This is called Godzilla.
So it's kind of like the kaiju version of
What?
So this is kind of like the kaiju version of
Oh, wait a minute, this is sort of like that, they did something.
advertised all the time on yeah, a few other channels.
They also did something kind of like this.
Yep, there have been Ultraman projects like this.
I mean, I got the first episode of the Ultraman version, so I was
What's up?
So I don't want to be that guy, but wasn't there a cartoon based off the 1998 Godzilla?
We can talk about that.
Where they're screaming at him with the megaphone and he's apparently listening to directions.
No, I was the Hanna-Barbera 70s.
I prefer the 70s version.
No, he's right, there was a 98 one.
It happens in both of them.
The guy goes, Godzilla, go to the left, go away from the fishing boat.
Back away! Yeah. So yeah, Godzilla is adorable, but also exactly not what a lot of people would be looking for out of a Godzilla anime, unless you're like me. So there's live action sequences where Godzilla and his sister, who's a human for some reason, like they get together and dance or like make pancakes. There's also a female Godzilla called Godzillin, and if you'll notice, the spikes on her back are shaped like hearts. And I gotta say, like, this reminds me of the female Pikachus with the heart-shaped tails.
So wait a minute, do you think a Godzilla is actually Manila's mother?
I don't want to speculate on that.
Nuclear fallout, man.
I have a question about the.
I thought it was hatched.
Weird sister thing. Is that just like an action figure that they use, that they pose? Did they just do stop motion and then use forced perspective, or?
This is a dude in a suit.
Really?
Yeah.
It's just a bad
Wow.
Yeah. There is, in fact, a Godzilla show that is done entirely with action figures, and it ran for like 200 episodes.
Island?
Godzilla Island. That show is crazy.
Sounds like the one guy from YouTube was like doing news on it too.
So, all of this aside, I think what a lot of people's, what they're really looking for, their prayers will be answered actually later this year, because what we're getting is a serious Godzilla anime. This is coming this year to Netflix. It's getting a theatrical play in Japan, but it's Polygon Pictures, so it's the same people that did Knights of Sidonia and Ajin and Blam. And it's written by this dude, Gen Urobuchi. So if you have seen, Madoka Magica or Psychopaths or Fate Zero, like he does really good work. So I'm looking forward to it, although I think he's got a pattern to his work that we'll probably see with this. This is going to be a trilogy of 3 movies that's been announced so far. We'll see how it goes, but basically the premise of this is it's set thousands of years in the future after Earth has been abandoned to all of the monsters that are rampaging. Humanity is coming back to fight and take the Earth back from them.
Do you know if it's gonna be subbed or dubbed?
Well,
I assume it's going to be both. We have not had a Godzilla movie that has not had subs and dubs available. Yep.
By chance, do you know if the one with him versus Biollante was dubbed?
Yes, it was.
Okay, cool. That's the one I do that.
What's up?
Is there any hints as to what incarnation this Godzilla is supposed to look like?
There has not been. They've been very tight-lipped with it. We haven't gotten a
I'm
trailer.
hoping it'll be the Hideaki Anno version.
What's up?
Are they gonna get Al Pacino to do the dub?
You'd probably have to talk with the studios about that. The dub for Shin Godzilla was just announced, and that's being done at Funimation for the first time. So, funny thing with Godzilla dubs is you usually don't know who the voice actors are. Funimation is rectifying that with the new release. All right, so I figured at this point I'd give a handful of recommendations for people who have not seen any movies, but I think that you guys are pretty knowledgeable. So,
I'm not, thank you.
all right.
Yes, for you.
What's gonna take that?
Matango is a movie about a group of castaways that gets stranded on an island with cannibalistic mushroom people. It was directed by Ishiro Honda, written by Takeshi Kimura, and is part of the overall Godzilla universe. So the Matango show up in later Godzilla TV shows and video games, even though Godzilla's not in that movie himself.
Are there any references made to it?
There's not in the movie itself. There aren't. See, it's one of those shared universe things, but they didn't really think things through like Marvel does. They were just sort of like, all right, we got a Godzilla and we got a Mothra. What if we had a Mothra versus Godzilla? Like that's basically like the extent of like they were very seat of their pants while they were coming up with the movies.
So, are you recommending Gamera 2 independent of the other Gamera films, or?
I would suggest that whole trilogy of all 3 of them, and you can get it all in one Blu-ray set, so it's really convenient that way. I just think that Gamera 2 is like the height of that, and it's well loved and well respected. Like
I like the Purple best actually. It's pretty good too.
there's a scene in the anime Nobunaga actually where the main character remarks about how her current life resembles the plot of Gamera 2, which I just thought was great.
Do you ever think they're gonna have Godzilla versus Gamera? Because with the new movies, they seem to be doing that. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but there's a movie that was out that you know who is going to fight you know who. I have a feeling you were saying it's the Gamera movie, right? I have a feeling at the end of that, he's going to fight you know who.
Yeah, I do think that there would be interest probably on the part of Kadokawa, especially if they've been working on this movie for 2 years and they still haven't like gotten us anything. They probably want to get in on that Toho Godzilla money, but I don't know if Toho wants to do that. There has actually been, and this is a bit of like super trivia. There was an official Gamera Godzilla stage show crossover in 1970. Where the original Godzilla actor fought against the Gamera suit in front of a crowd, and it was something I can't find anything about.
Yeah, the only like information I found about it was like there was an issue of G-Fan where they pitted the Godzilla monsters that are most like the Gamera monsters, and like for some reason, surprisingly, Gamera monsters were winning, but when it came to Godzilla and Gamera, Godzilla won. Like the only Gamera monster that didn't win was the one they chose against Ghidorah because it was the Kraken monster.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't think any monster in any universe can beat Ghidorah by itself, so... What's up? You got a question?
Is there any way that they're any chance they could possibly going to like merge the Shin Godzilla like continuity with the legendary?
I would be very surprised if they did that. They might continue the Shin Godzilla continuity, and you know, weird things have happened in manga, so they might have a crossover there. I would be surprised if they did that in the movies. That would be complicated for them.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be really hard to do this.
What Godzilla movie is in the top left next to Shin Godzilla? Should you recommend it?
That is the original.
Okay. That's the criteria.
So somebody asked about this, so we'll go ahead and bring it up. So there has been Godzilla in Western animation. There was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon that is good is one way you could describe it. Godzilla has a nephew who is like a little flying thing that's voiced by the same actor as Scooby-Doo. Godzilla is actually voiced by the guy that did Lurch in the Addams Family. So rather than your standard Godzilla roar, he's just going rah, 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 rah. But I mean, this cartoon also, Godzilla shoots laser beams from his eyes because that's easier to animate. So there are differences from it. It is actually the biggest Godzilla's ever been on screen, though, if you account for the scale there. So that's a bragging point. The 1998 show is much better. I think that's something that gets highly underlooked because it's a sequel to a movie that's sort of mediocre. But what's up?
Yeah, the Godzilla in the 1998 cartoon is actually more of a Godzilla than the Godzilla in the movie.
Oh, absolutely. It breathes fire for one. So.
And it's actually tough and hard to kill.
Yep. And this cartoon actually had an arc that was sort of remaking the storyline of Destroy All Monsters, where aliens come down, they brainwash all the monsters on Earth and send them to all of the cities on the planet. Basically, in that storyline, they revive the corpse of the dead Godzilla from the movie and make it into a cyborg. And Toho must have liked that because a few years later, they made a movie where that was the plot. So.
It's also probably the first time they even considered giving him gills. Because when he lights up, his neck lights up. And the little lines in his neck light up.
Yep.
Gills.
Both the 2014 movie and Shin Godzilla from last year, Godzilla has gills. So maybe Godzilla will just always have gills from now on.
Is there a scene in Shin Godzilla where they hypothesize that he could fly?
There is a scene in Shin Godzilla where they hypothesize that he can fly, and I think that was a reference to a couple of movies where Godzilla does silly things like that tail slide that we saw earlier in the presentation.
Yep, the volleyball match.
All right. Well, we got a couple more minutes. What's up?
What is your all-time favorite Godzilla movie of all time?
My all-time favorite Godzilla movie. Wow, that's like having to pick between my children, but it's gonna be Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Yes.
Oh, hard to pick for the kids too.
Mine is personally Godzilla 2000. It's a monster. I love Warner.
It's a cool monster.
For me, it's a tie between the original Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla and Final Wars.
That's an interesting combo, but the director of Final Wars, his favorite movie was the original Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, so that works.
It's got that like kinetic energy.
All right. Well, if you want to check out more of my rantings and ravings, I have a blog called Mazer Patrol. And we have stuff up there, such as a translation of the aforementioned story where Godzilla goes to the Godzilla planet and things are weird. We also have a couple of manga translations, weekly news recaps, and articles just sort of going off on various things. All right. Well, I'll be around if anyone has questions, and we've got one more DVD if anybody wants it.